Hi all, welcome to Difference and Dominance in Education by EDC1200. The chosen topic for this assignment was low socioeconomic families. But what does this concept mean? How do we come to an understanding of high socioeconomics and low socioeconomics?
Low and high socioeconomics is an individual's position that measures different particular factors such as income, residence, heritage, religion, and education that all fall onto a socio-economic scale. The topic stemmed of the article that was found on Perth Now News. The article was called WA Families Forced to Live in Tents. The article reveals shocking information about Perth and its rental problems that cause a rapid increase in the working community who cannot afford their weekly rent or obtain ownership on a house. People have been forced out of their homes and now tents swarm caravan parks that overflow with desperate people.
The assignment's objective is to gain students' understanding of the topic and help them to understand about different socio-economic statuses in families and how they gain these statuses, how people deal with these differences and why they happen. The concept of class can be taught in the higher grades of primary school, targeting at particular grades of 5 to 6. This grade is ideal because children are starting to ask questions about the wider world around them and why individuals and their families are different from each other. When children reach these grades in their learning, they will be able to comprehend different situations and the severity of them if they are taught to the students in the correct manner.
The main focus will cover the topic of class, how families struggle with low class, charity work to support the families in need, and learning to give back to the community. Geography and ICT skills will also be learnt from this topic. The focus will be split up into a period of 3 lessons, and the children will learn many skills during the 3 lessons. These skills include making maps, learning geographical points of underprivileged areas and towns, learning to set up a charity and give back to the public, and much more. The children will also engage in a number of activities that will help them understand the concept better, such as reading stories that relate to the topic, setting up a charity drive where students can donate clothes and food, and playing custom-made games relating to the concept of class. All of these educational activities will help the children to understand the concept of class better and help them to comprehend the meaning of low and high socio-economic statuses and why they exist.
On the first lesson, the teacher will introduce the topic of class to the students. Students will be learning about the 3 different levels of class and their definitions. The 3 levels of class are the lower, middle, and upper classes. The teacher will write up the definitions for the students to copy down in their books, and this will give them a basic understanding of the 3 levels of class. Lower class, when individuals are receiving a wage that is not sufficient enough to support themselves or their families. Lower class families usually cannot afford their rent most of the time and are supported by government-funded agencies that supply them with payments. Some of these agencies include Centrelink. Middle-class individuals and their families receive a wage that is sufficient enough for them to afford the necessities needed for the household. Middle-class families can usually afford the rent on their houses, but usually budget their money and spend it wisely when it is needed. Upper-class individuals or families earn a wage that is abundant for them to live their lives in a comfortable manner. Upper-class families usually own their houses and can afford many luxuries they might enjoy in their lives. Children will also be introduced to the difference between the 3 levels of class and taught about the dominance that upper class holds over the middle class and how the middle class holds dominance over the lower class.
The teacher will then show a simple diagram to the class that represents the 3 levels of class. After having the theory of classes explained to them, the students will then see a visual representation of how the upper class is on top of the middle class, and how the middle class is on top of the lower class. This will give the students a better understanding of which classes are more dominant over each other. The teacher will then engage in a classroom discussion about what the students thought about the concept of class. Questions like these are asked. What did you think about the topic of class? Do you understand what happens when people are in a high or a low class? Do you know anyone who would be in a high class? And could anybody tell me what happens when families are in a low class? After question time, the class will then move on to a class activity that involves a particular storybook that can be related back to class. The storybook is called What Do People Do All Day? And the section that the students are studying is called Everyone is a Worker.
The section in the book relates to the concept of class because it displays all of the characters and the type of jobs they have. It then shows children what the characters do with the money, how some characters buy food for their families, buy essentials for their farms, or put it into the bank for safekeeping. This book is a great example of difference and dominance because it shows the students of the different characters and their jobs and how much money each character has. The teacher explains to the students about how some people cannot get enough money to buy wonderful things for their families, like the characters can. Relating a real-life scenario to a book will give the children a better understanding of the topic and not make the topic so confronting for children. The teacher engages in a classroom discussion with the student about the book. The teacher questions the student about how much money particular characters will earn and what they use the money for. Asking children questions about the book will not only test their knowledge on the book that was freshly read to them, but also helps them to understand about the way money works for the communities and individuals. This lesson gives students a simple introduction to the topic of class and also some prior knowledge to the new idea that they are learning. Giving students prior knowledge will help them to understand difference and dominance and the different levels associated with the concept of class.
The teacher starts off the lesson by doing class revision of the class visual diagram that was shown in the previous lesson. The teacher also gives the students a more in-depth explanation of three classes. Upper class. Wealthy, powerful people are in this class. They often come from rich families and they receive their wealth through estates, which are passed from generation to generation. The upper class is generally within the wealthiest 1 or 2% of the population, also called the 1%. Middle class. Middle class people are usually professional workers, small business owners and low-level managers, also called white-collar workers. Lower class. Lower class people are usually either employed but lacking financial security or unemployed and or homeless. They rely on minimum wage paying jobs, also called working classes and blue-collar workers.
The teacher highlights the theme of difference and dominance by giving the students an autobiography written by a person who has experienced financial hardship and lost their home at some point of their lives. The class is split off into groups of 5 and is given a different autobiography in each group. The student reads the autobiography, then writes one about themselves to demonstrate the contrast, difference and dominance displayed in the two autobiographies. The class then has a discussion about the autobiographies, then some examples of their own. The teacher explains what it is like to be in a different financial state to another individual.
Food drive. Look at organisations like Lifeline and the Salvation Army and learn about what they do, how people benefit, how they find out which people need their help, what people do within the organisation, etc. Look at successful campaigns for food, warm clothes, etc. and see how these are constructed. In their groups of 5, tell the class that each group is the head of a not-for-profit organisation and this year they are in charge of the annual collections for charity. They are to create their own company, assign roles to each of the students such as project manager, publicity manager, etc. and they are to create their own advertising campaign for their charity collection. At the end of the class, the groups will pitch their idea to the class, acting as though they are in a real business meeting. Then the whole class gets together and donates food and warm clothes to people who are not so fortunate, so that the students get a feel of what it is like to give back to the community. Hyperlinks were put into the presentation to display different charity organisations that will receive donations from the class.
The third lesson is all about what the students have learned over the last 2 days while working with the concept of class. The teacher starts the class discussion asking questions such as, who can remember what we learnt yesterday? Are there any students that need some help understanding? Can anyone give me their own definition of class? The teacher uses childlike demonstrations of Peter Rabbit and Barney the dinosaur to show to the students how difference may look in a visual aspect, but also describe the unity that the two child characters share.
The students are split off into groups of 5 and clear off this floor space. The custom-made Monopoly boards are spread out onto the floor and the groups go to 1 Monopoly board each. The teacher explains to the students how to play the Monopoly game and why all the cities and towns are on the board, and also what each location means. This game's focus is to encourage teamwork among the students and to get them working together in peace. Year 6 buddies are used as bankers in the game, and small amounts of money are handed out to children who may have more difficulty understanding math than other students.
The teacher walks around the classroom and takes note of the children who are leaders while playing the game and others who are not so confident to speak up whilst playing the game. After the game is finished, the class is encouraged to have a discussion that concludes the end of the unit of study. The students may use the Monopoly board as an aid to answer the questions about the game and if they understood the concept of class better after playing that game. The questions are a way to see which students are having trouble understanding the concept and which students really understand the concept of class. The teacher also asks questions about the 3 lessons, asking the students questions relating to all areas that they covered over that time. The inspiration for this presentation, that is the Perth Now article, brought to light the strong issue of homelessness and families that are struggling financially, even if work is found. This illustrates the negative impacts of being in a low socio-economic status and the difference between the classes. We are confident that the 3 lesson plans presented will inform and educate Years 5 and 6 on the subject of class. This presentation has expanded our knowledge of difference and dominance and the hardships of reality for those less fortunate than others.